Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! And video game news. Let's see what's new. Apparently there was a effect resolution for Mirror Jade, the Ice Blade Dragon. When using the following effect, during the end phase, the effect is applied resolved as the effect that doesn't build a chain instead of that does. Once per turn, you can send one fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard that mentions Fallen Alibaz. I think that's Albaz. As material, banish one monster on the field, and then also the card cannot use this effect next turn. This issue has been fixed in PvP duels. For PvE duels, this will be fixed at the next version update, which seems odd that you would specify a difference there, because at the moment I don't think there are any player versus event duels. Like, there are no event duels here, so the only thing you could potentially say is a player versus event maybe is the solo stuff, but wouldn't it would seem more than likely that that would be fairly easy to just change and fix for everybody all at once. So yeah, I guess we don't really have a lot to do at the start here. I'm still playing about the Zodiac Tri Brigade, and the reason for that is that the suggestion, while not wrong, was to go and find a new deck from like Hearthstone, no, not Hearthstone Deck Tracker, but find a new deck, build a new deck since the new selection cards are here. So I went to masterduelmeta.com, I believe was the website, and I looked at this deck, which is like the best winning deck ever, to just kind of get a comparison. And I built it, which took too much time, considering how I am 119 crafting points short for ultra rares. I would be, everything else would be alright. So I could generate this card deck if I had 119 extra crafting points for ultra rares. If otherwise, what I would have to do is simply just remove cards and make compromises. And this probably is too much compromises, because of the extra decks in particular. I'd also, of course, have to learn whatever strategy the Sword Soul Tenyi is about. But yeah, I could get all the super rare cards. It would just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ultra rares that we'd have to probably, let's see, the craft 1 is 30, so if I need 120, I'd have to get rid of like 4 ultra rares for this deck. So yeah, from that perspective, I said to myself, well, let's look at the free-to-play tag, because obviously I'm a free-to-play player, and there's more of a reasonable chance of having that deck to craft. That being said, I am still 29 short as far as ultra rares if I was going to craft this deck for the B Troopers, which I guess means if I got rid of one Max C, I'd be alright. Or if I got rid of this ultra rare. I suppose that could be another way through this, is that we could make a slight modification by saying one fewer of those and maybe one more of those. That still leaves me at one ultra rare crafting point. So it would absolutely wipe out any crafting points for the next expansion to do this. But I could do this. Again, I would have to learn the Bee Troopers as a deck. I don't know if it really is valuable to still have Max C. It may very well be a case that Max C is just a holdover card that doesn't make sense anymore. So that's my question at the moment, is should I make Bee Troopers and use up all the crafting points, or should I hold off for maybe the next expansion? Because inherently the problem with the crafting points is you just don't get extra crafting points, and you just won't, particularly for the ultra rares as a free-to-play player. We're starting to see the ugly downside of Konami, I believe, in that they really don't want players to be playing free-to-play, and they really don't want to help you there. And it's very possible that those decks are wrong, and I went to the wrong website anyways, so... But yeah, legacy packs aren't going to get me extra crafting points. The only thing that would get me extra crafting points would be to probably go fairly heavy in either this selection deck or the next selection deck. Just actually like counting the number of ultra rares that are available. So this stops here with ultra rares, and then if this stops... No, they probably counted out in selection packs very specifically, so it's always going to be the same number of ultra rares. You might consider the ones you already own, but yeah, if you had 10,000 extra crystals to spend and just went heavy on opening packs here just to get crafting points, that's really the only way you're going to get it. As far as daily quests and all of that, you're only getting crystals at a small amount, and that is that. Lifetime wise, it's just crystals, it's not crafting points. You do get some crafting points, I suppose, from the Duel Pass. So yes, 6 ultra rare crafting points at level 54, another 6 at level 60, another 6 at 65. So yeah, it is a very small amount. However, even at level 100 you're getting 12 crafting points, and it's not like it's a situation where crafting the Bee Troopers deck gets you the cards and makes it significantly higher chances that you already have the cards you need for future meta decks. That there's just no guarantee in that at all. But obviously I need to do something. I don't know if Bee Troopers is the right thing or not to do. I'll have to think about it, see if anybody wants to hop in the chat and mention their opinions on it. As for the accountability section, well, it turns out the reason why I've had so much trouble with this guest Wi-Fi Raspberry Pi setup is that at some point I installed Firewall D. So I basically installed a firewall and forgot I installed a firewall. So no wonder that the VPN wasn't connecting. No wonder that I was having problems. I just installed it and forgot about it, and so that's why it wasn't connecting, and that's really just the source of wasting 2 days. Inherently, this is the kind of thing that scares me if I was ever going to go and try and work in IT again, is that you potentially in a development operation system setup could make that kind of bonehead mistake, and then if you don't have a caring, kinding, understanding boss, which very often you don't have a caring, understanding boss who's kind, they would just use that as an excuse to say you're an idiot and you're fired. Whereas the absent-minded professor mentality is fairly common, I think, amongst IT people to make those kinds of mistakes. Yeah, but after I figured out I had the firewall, I made some more progress. Although I also started playing Tacoma, which is, I guess, the spiritual successor of Gone Home, but it is certainly doing it in a different way, and it's frankly a fairly boring story. I don't feel like they improved upon their first outing in a lot of ways, because Gone Home is really a story from one person's perspective being told a story from another person's perspective. So there's really just one character, and it's the younger sister, not the sister you're playing as, and you're seeing everything kind of from her perspective, I think, for the most part. Where Tacoma has 6 characters that you're watching what you assume are absolutely accurate recordings of what happened in different time frames, and so it's just like you were watching security footage, and then you're just walking around following different people as the groups break up, and they continue to have conversations as they walk from one room to the other. And that is kind of the only major change. Otherwise, Tacoma really is just the let's go to the Unity asset store and buy a bunch of pre-made 3D models and use that to fluff out a game when we really don't have a gameplay mechanic. There's probably a little bit more keys and passcodes in Tacoma, by which I mean there's probably about 6, and there may not be any in Gone Home, but Gone Home's narrative and story so far, compared to Tacoma so far, was way better and way more interesting. Perhaps it's because Gone Home teased itself like it was a spooky horror game, and that around every corner there might be a monster, whereas Tacoma could be an aliens movie type story since it's set in space, and there could be an alien wandering around, but they don't do that, and at no point is there really any tension or drama or anything that I've seen. It's just kind of people watching and being told a fairly boring story, even at that. And inherently, they could have had the feeling of a monster in Tacoma, because there is a cat character. So if there was just a cat that was scripted to be in certain places and give you a jump scare every now and then, or if you just heard skittering in the air vents every now and then because of the cat, that would have been fine. That would have given some level of life to the spaceship. But yeah, there's just kind of nothing like that. Wow. 1 card surrender. He had only the strategy for the Babylon Tower, so as soon as I played Harpy's Feather Duster, he gave up. Which I am fine with that. I'm fairly far behind. I'm again back to making longer episodes than I probably should with Tacoma, but storyline wise it kind of forced me into that direction. And I'll probably be done with it in a couple of hours. But there is a director's commentary that I might do, although the director's commentary feels like it has a high chance of really being garbage anyways, because the game and the main story doesn't feel that interesting. So what could the commentary add to a bad foundation like that? Increase level by 1. Let's just go ahead and cancel this effect, since he seems to be interested in doing that. But yeah, I'm not particularly enjoying it. It definitely feels like uh, they Tacoma probably would have been a better game if they had just had live action animators. I mean, live action footage in the game, full motion video, and do that on the green screen background, put an effect on it, and then just show the actors. Instead, they're showing these wireframe characters, and it doesn't seem like there's really a good enough reason for that to be the case, to do it that way. Yeah, let's just end it there. If he's gonna play Maxi and try and draw cards, we'll just not special summon anything so he can't draw cards. We'll special summon in the next turn. Even if he killed the character, I have another Zodiac character I could summon. Although maybe it was a mistake to put this here if I was going to destroy that guy when I could have put it here. Maybe a mistake to break this guy's ability early. He may have discarded a card first. Yeah, I'll probably bounce between finishing up Tacoma and finishing up working on the guest Wi-Fi AdGuard home Raspberry Pi setup that I'm doing. One of the things that I did find particularly difficult is that 1.1.1.1 as a DNS server is specifically treated as an IP address and not words that you would go through an upstream domain name stream server. So it's actually fairly difficult to block the secure DNS settings that are going to be default or are default for Google on like Google Android, Chrome's browsers, Chrome browsers in general, not just the Android ones. Which secure DNS is sort of about security, but it is also, I think, fairly obviously about making it harder to block ads from your own internal network. And so there is a difficulty there that is extra to have to basically know the names of all DNS servers that use secure DNS, which there aren't that many at the moment, and block those specifically as an extra aspect. But I was able to do that. I was also able, I'm fairly certain, to convert over standard DNS traffic to the internal DNS server without having to do anything else special, which it certainly could have been more of a hassle. Go ahead and get this as powerful. Am I gonna win in one turn here? Probably not. But we'll see. and then I had to go through a fairly heavy sys setup to get TLS through DNS setup, which is kind of like secured DNS, but it's just a slightly older technology by maybe just a couple of months, and it is not as restrictive, or perhaps it's not as encrypted, even, and in this weird case, being more encrypted is not your goal. But I definitely wanted secure DNS enabled for all the servers that I was going through using TLS over DNS, and all of this probably just sounds like a whole bunch of gibberish, I know, but and so I had to end up trying every single every possible server just to make sure secure DNS works, and that they are at least to that level trustworthy. So that was a lot of extra time just clicking apply, testing it, and then using a website, and then changing the settings and clicking apply again. We can get rid of this permanently as a card. Do we have enough to win, though? Yeah, I think we may. So this may be the point where he just concedes. Unless he can do something particularly special. Like that. Let's see. Guess that means we want this. We'll go ahead and set this. We'll go ahead and end the turn. As I constantly have other things to do, finishing the guest Wi-Fi server would be nice. To move on to other projects. I am actually making, I think, more progress. And if anything, now that the summer is over and cooler times are in the future, making more progress is a little bit easier now. But yeah, I've got a couple of more laborious tasks that I've backburnered for far too long. I should have probably activated this first to destroy this before summoning this guy. But yeah, I guess I'm generally happy about the amount of progress I made over this weekend, which is something I can't say very often in the past few months. I've been definitely less than productive in previous weekends. Target one monster that cannot be normal summoned set in either graveyard and special summon it. Does he have something like that? Apparently I have something like that. That being said, I don't think that's going to help him much. Yeah, and you probably can't do any better than that, so attack here. Since he has like one card, and I have no cards in the turn there. We have a decent amount of news, and there's not a lot of reason to delay that, so we should probably just go ahead and cover the news. Apparently there is a contest that someone is doing, Mighty Jax is doing, around Tiny Tina Wonderlands, giving away little action figures, vinyl figures. It does seem like there's an attempt here to do some different level of advertisement of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, because also notably they have put out a retweet this tweet and we'll give you a shift code promotion, which has never been how shift codes have worked up until this point. They've always just said, here's the shift code, it works for everybody, it's not special or custom to a single person. I imagine even if you did retweet the tweet, you probably are getting a generic shift code that works for everybody. But the idea that all of a sudden they are desperate for retweets and is a little weird. It's a little weird that anybody would even care about Twitter that much to particularly focus on retweets. The founder and head of 343 Industry, Bonnie Ross, is leaving the company. They're saying to attend to a family medical issue. So often it feels like specifically women leave jobs to take care of their families or medical issues when men don't feel that same pressure to do so. Although at a certain level it may just be a convenient excuse that women can use at those high CEO levels, whereas a male CEO can't really make that same claim. It always rings a little false as far as where I'm leaving to take care of a medical issue. It may be very true, but it just never really feels that true. Let's see, GameDeveloper.com has an article here. Square Enix is going to go all in on blockchain with a new Oasis partnership, OASYS, which, yeah, maybe that's just more bad leadership from Square Enix, or maybe that was the direction that Square Enix has been pushing, and maybe Crystal Dynamics and other non-Japanese companies were just not supporting that idea or getting in line behind that idea, and that's why they cut those companies to then turn around and potentially try to acquire new companies. But yeah, here's the Gearbox official National Video Game Day. Retweet this post and we'll send a skeleton key for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands right now, which seems to be oddly odd that they would want that retweet. Maybe it's specifically because it's National Video Game Day, but maybe there's something else going on. Let's see. Well, my last chance of succeeding would be this. I still have a small chance of success. And attack here. And maybe I played that wrong and should have banished the other guy and attacked the other guy. Gamatsu is doing something weird where they retweeted this descriptor pin tweet. I guess at the bottom it says give us a follow if you like, but it almost feels like they just felt the need to retweet something because I don't even know, they've had other stories in the past few hours, so yeah, doesn't quite make sense why they retweeted that. Yeah, this loses the game for me though. According to Your Gamer here, which is not a source I usually use, Ubisoft says the Assassin's Creed Mirage does not have real gaming or loot boxes. There apparently was a listing that claimed it did have real gambling. Which I don't know if that just means that virtually in the game there's maybe a virtual gambling minigame. That would, I think, fairly make some sense if that was the case. This is taking forever and I'm goofing off like ad blocking things on Your Gamer. Might as well activate things. Hop back into the game because there's not really anything else to do. Hmm. Well, that fixes your gamer's site somewhat, but there is still some kind of awkwardness that I can really only make worse, but I can't make better about it being shifted and justified a little bit to the right. But yeah, I don't use Eurogamer as particularly a source for news anyways because they tend to be annoying. Take that card. Go ahead and activate this. And discard this. I've been watching on Hulu the old TBS show The Librarians, which is basically kind of fairly the same concept as Warehouse 13, except for instead of being sci-fi, it's more magic slightly. One thing that's shocking in going back and watching the Librarians TV series based off the Librarian movie series by TBS, movie for cable TV series, is just how few like episodes they really had. They really get to episodes that I would have thought aired in season 2 or season 3 in the first season, and it probably is more of a case that the show didn't really air consistently every week, because like every episode is like 40 minutes anyways, which is way too long. But it also is kind of shockingly one of those kinds of shows that probably would have never succeeded and definitely wouldn't succeed. And so at that, it definitely feels like a old school TV show. Although inherently, if you're going to watch any old school TV show, it is just going to be something that is fairly aged, and you are looking at it through nostalgia goggles. There really aren't any great shows that don't age very quickly in TV. Movies, I think, have a better chance of not aging, but yeah, TV shows are always lower budget. Sniper Ranger's on the chat. He says, "Oh, try Brigade again." Smiley face, or laughing smiley face again. Yeah, we'll get to that after this game, because I have this B Troopers deck that, since Sniper Ranger has been helping me be better at decks, that he almost certainly will be able to give some input into whether this new deck is the deck I should craft. I think I set this before these were set, but whatever. Trying to just see what they're doing. Let's see, send that to the graveyard. Maybe add this to the deck. I guess that's probably the best bet. Okay. Then summon this. And activate this. This one, this one, this one. And this one, I suppose. Summon this. Put that there. Activate that effect. If they're still not able or willing to activate these cards, then we shall see. Just let that resolve, I guess. So these do seem like these are this is a normal trap, this is a normal trap, so probably benefits you to banish that. Okay. And let's just attack from there. Yeah. He said Sniper Ranger saying don't chain. Let's let this actually get to the field, and then let's activate this, which actually would only let me summon 3 things anyways. Ooh, we're gonna be in trouble here, aren't we? Yeah, just let it happen. This one, this one, this one. I didn't have enough spaces. Didn't plan ahead. That's fine. Like, my hope was to have summoned the 4 character, but it wouldn't have mattered anyways, would it? So just summon that here and that there. Yeah, still doesn't really feel like I played right there, but I think I played particularly well. Well, maybe not. Nerl, the makers of Reigns and Reigns Her Majesty, is looking for an associate producer, so I assume there is a new Reigns game or a new game from the makers of Reigns in development. They are, I think, advertising themselves more as Reigns and Reigns Her Majesty, and probably hoping you forget about Reigns Game of Thrones. Gemetsu has the same article here. 343 Industries founder Bonnie Ross is departing. She's attending to a family medical issue, is the claim here. This isn't a terribly unprofessional picture, but it does seem like, for the small percentage of female people in charge in the video game industry world, there is kind of far too high of an instance of them getting these Hollywood actor headshot type or not even headshots, but just like this is a either high fashion or I want to be an actor, I want to be a celebrity shot. This is not I'm in a power suit or I'm even slightly dressing professionally that you would expect in any other industry. Although in all fairness, as far as the game industry, most male CEOs and founders are also fairly slobs, and it really is only people like the Activision Blizzard Bobby Kotick that really is in a suit and lives that suit lifestyle. But I think it's a mistake for everybody in the game industry, frankly. You dress for success, particularly when you're at that high level. You're barely doing any work, so you can pretend like you're professional by dressing the traditional way, even if the traditional way is old-fashioned and stupid in every aspect. So he's gonna try and kill me, which, let's see if we can do something here to say get rid of this card and get rid of this card. Cut the attack in half, cut the attack in half. Wow. Of all the things that I would have thought may have saved me, that was definitely not the one I would have expected. Sniper Ranger said you should be an associate producer. Yeah, at a certain level, I think age and age and just cronyism leads to everybody needing to be higher and higher up the ladder, or just being satisfied with never getting into the management in the first place. Like my ego will not allow me for 1 second to disagree with you and say no, I shouldn't be an associate producer. Do I want to be an associate producer? Probably not. It'd certainly be a bigger question as to what the project was and what I was associate producing. Or arguably, I don't know if I shouldn't just be the CEO and boss in a lot of ways. But there's almost certainly not enough experience on my resume to justify being in any middle management or upper management career. I definitely have to stretch and explain my YouTube channel in such a way to justify that. Theoretically, as the owner and sole proprietor of my YouTube channel, I am already the boss, so I am the highest person there, but I'm also the only person there, so I can't blame anybody else really if anything goes wrong, short of just blaming YouTube itself, which is somewhat valid to blame YouTube itself. Let's see. There definitely are things that I am critical of as far as as far as game directors and CEOs and people like that in video game companies, and from that perspective I definitely could see where I would feel like I could do a better job. But the day-to-day fight and grind certainly being a producer, being an associate producer, of just fighting with publishers to get funding and fighting with people who have different opinions about where the budget should go and where people should be spending their time would probably wear on me fairly quickly and cause far too much stress for what it's worth. Alright, Sniper Ranger. Basically, this is for you, and I know there's a 30-second delay, but I already talked about this. I'll go over it again and see what you have to say. We have this B Trooper deck, and I would use up all but one of my crafting ultra rare points. 150 ultra rare crafting points. It would also reduce a lot of my super rare points, neutral points, and rare points, normal points and such. Not such a bad deal there. So, compared to Zodiac B Trooper, is this deck the new meta, in your opinion, since you're the expert as far as I know? Is it really worth crafting another Max C? But yeah, is this the new meta? Would this get me higher than getting around Platinum 5 at best compared to Zodiac B Trooper? In hindsight, also knowing that I would have to relearn all of this, and I'm not going to pay a lot of attention, so relearning will be a slow and painful process. Yeah. So, Sniper Ranger says, I would not recommend B Trooper, nope. Well, that's the deck that was the free-to-play deck that was on Master Duel Meta that I built. The other deck that I tried to build here, Sword Soul Tinyu, I can't afford. This was a non-free-to-play deck at the same website, but I would need 119 more ultra rare crafting points, which I just don't have, and I'm not likely to have anytime soon. I would lean towards assuming that this deck is probably better since it's not a free-to-play deck. But yeah, I don't know if it is going to consistently stay better by the time I would get enough crafting points to even consider playing this deck. Like, I probably could craft these decks with a lot less cost if I got rid of all the extra decks cards, but if you get rid of all the extra deck cards, you can't probably play the deck successfully anyways. So yeah, over the weekend I spent extra time making these two decks, and it seems to be to no avail. I will throw out the opportunity here, if anyone, including Sniper Ranger, knows the exact name of a deck that they are suggesting I craft, I will write that down, and when I get some free time, it may take me a week or two, I'll go on Master Duel Meta or some other site if you want to tell me a name of a different site as far as what deck they think I could actually afford and craft. Unfortunately, with the public deck search, you don't get usernames, you don't get titles. All you're really getting is pictures, and then you'd have to click on it, the picture, and then you would have to just see what the cards are. And they do let you do tags like Shadal, Despia, Branded, Tilamentus as far as categories. So if there were specific categories, you could search for that. This oddly, as a deck, seems to also not be showing half the cards. But maybe that's because that's a permanent deck. Let's just go to a different one. Yeah, this is a more regular deck. So I suppose you could try and filter by category. Sword Soul. Alright. Sword Soul. SORDSOUL. Hit enter. Nothing found. See, that's the problem, is that you can throw out names all you want, but it doesn't quite work that way. Unlike Hearthstone, where you can just friend people and borrow their decks and actually get their cards and use them. But there's just a long list here of cards that Sword Soul brings up. So how am I supposed to know which one of these is the right Sword Soul or not? And that's very much why I also don't... It's the same problem like the problem on... as far as playing with people, is that you you just don't really know specifically the list. This is a Sword Soul deck. I literally cannot craft it. Says negative 119 ultra rare things. Is there a way to send a deck list to you? Not efficiently. You would be better off putting your deck list on something like Master Duel Meta and posting it there and then sharing the link to that. If there was some significant change to what this Sword Soul deck is, if it was just getting rid of like 1 or 2 cards, sure, you could tell me that, but right now there just is not a way to do that at all. Like, and that's why I've not been super hyped about the idea of crafting new decks, is because it is a lot of time to put the cards in to just find out you don't have the crafting points. There really is no like extra cards that you're likely to get at all unless you just go away from being free to play. Yeah, I can dismantle cards, I know that, but I don't have any extra cards, so like I'm not really willing to go show me all of the like ultra rare cards, which is what I would need, and then start picking winners and losers as far as which of the ultra rare cards that I do have would I want to dismantle. Remember, also dismantling, you only get 10 dust, so you're talking 13 ultra rare cards I'd have to pick to get rid of, whereas it costs 30 to generate it. So in that 13, I'm effectively losing in the long run 20 times 13, which is 260 dust. So it's actually a horrible financial decision to dust things just to get to Sword Soul. So I need something that would be a budget Sword Soul deck, and maybe I'll go back and look at Master Duel Meta and see if I can find something like that. But at the moment, this is the problem. You're actually fairly lucky, or I'm fairly lucky, in that you can buy structured decks, even though they're fairly useless decks, and that you even have that many decks in the first place. Like, plenty of collectible card games would have just started you off with a starter deck, and then maybe in free to play you would have had enough to craft one deck. But yeah, there's there is that problem, and it's a problem that will certainly it's a problem that will certainly get fixed eventually, but at the moment it doesn't have a solution. Hearthstone certainly did this. Flowander, I will write that name down, certainly, and save a deck. Let's see if we can save a deck with just a name. Nope, you have to have at least one card. And so that Bee Troopers, we'll just delete that deck, even though I put a lot of effort into it. And what's really scary certainly here, I'll look up Flowander and see if I can build that when I get around to it. But what's scary here certainly is that you'd spend the last of your crafting points, and then the next time there's an expansion, you just won't have any crafting points at all. And that's not really the situation I want to be in. But yeah, I've gotten fairly high, but I definitely have hit the wall of as far as free-to-play can get you. I could do something else here. I could certainly go back to saying playing one of these structured decks and seeing if the meta has somewhat changed around playing one of these structured decks, but I imagine that's not the case. This structured deck in particular is fairly one note as far as I ever understood it, so I imagine that the Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck is way better. Continuing with video game news, Don't Nod has announced a co-development partnership with Tiny Bull Studios, working on an upcoming title. They're working on their ambitions to become a third-party game publisher, which that usually is an indicator when a video game company has run out of ideas, and that is what they are trying to do, is just profit off of other developers. I don't think Tiny Bull Studio, though, has really made anything, and Don't Nod is really only known for making one critically well-received Life is Strange game, and then 3 less than critically well-received games. Even in this article from GameDeveloper.com, it says third-party publishing isn't for everyone, which honestly I don't know if it's ideally for anyone. Yeah, at a certain level, there is the old-fashioned mentality where you plant your seeds, you harvest your crop, and then you take the profits from selling that crop to reinvest and get better seeds, better fertilizer, and maybe more land and a better this looks new. But yeah, you just reinvest in yourself, and that's the old way of doing things. But then nowadays, you get a bumper crop and you sell that crop. In the case of video game companies, that would be you sell one successful video game, and then instead of investing in yourself or having any faith in your own ambition or your own skill, you immediately go and try and put that in some other company and make profit by not doing any of the work, which inherently points to the natural state of humanity, whether it's a corporation or an individual, is that that it is by default, laziness is the default state of all humans and all animals, and so they would prefer to just do nothing and profit off of someone else's efforts than investing in themselves. But particularly in the video game world, that leads to slightly successful or one-hit wonder companies trying to be third-party publishers, and we haven't seen it actually work at all because it ignores the danger and the risk of investing in someone else that is higher than investing in yourself, because people are not held as accountable when they're playing with someone else's money. Sniper Ranger wants me to not play the structured deck, which, okay. I will not play the deck after this game, but I'm not going to like surrender or stop playing since I'm already in it. And he said he would help me with the Flow Wander. What I'll say to that is, when I get free time, I will rebuild the Flow Wander like I did today, and then at that point I will wait for you to, in a future stream, pop in and I will show it to you, and you can give me any tweak suggestions if I've built one that is slightly different, and I will at that point also know how much of the crafting points will be used up to make the deck, but it's just not entertaining and not really in the schedule to bring this entire stream to a halt to spend 20 minutes building it, which that's probably how it would go. Alright, so we're battle phase, and that was my only option. This guy is wrecking me, and I don't even know how he's doing it. GameDeveloper.com has an article here to say Netflix has stricken a deal, or struck a deal, or stroke a deal. I guess stricken's the right word. With Ubisoft for 3 exclusive games: a Valiant Hearts sequel, a new Assassin's Creed game, and a new version of the Mighty Quest for Epic Loot will be exclusive for Netflix. At the very least, those are names I kind of recognize, whereas up until this point, Netflix's gaming ambitions seem to have been fairly low effort and low quality. I'm playing anti-meta now, according to Sniper Ranger, so I can't special summon. Well, that has screwed me over. Alright, well, I'm just gonna lose. Let's see. What is it stopping you from? Neither players can special summon monsters. Yeah, and at a certain level, wouldn't it make sense, and maybe this is my own ignorance here, to have an anti-meta deck like this? Have one meta deck and have an anti-meta deck and bounce between the two, whatever the meta tends to be. Although maybe there's a higher risk of playing an anti-meta deck as the meta slightly shifts over the weeks. Because as an idea, as a card, this sounds interesting, certainly, to just irritate the players and not let them do anything. It most certainly has demolished me playing this deck, but it would have probably demolished me playing Zodiac Tri-Brigade also. It's been a while since I've played that deck, and yep, it definitely still feels like, well, that was my best deck before I picked a deck. Zodiac Tri-Brigade really blew it out of the water. And I'm not seeing anybody play Zodiac Tri-Brigade, so I assume that this meta deck is just completely done and not in the meta at all. Like that there isn't just a small number of tweaks. Because ideally that's what we would want to do, is we'd want to make just a version 2.0 of the Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck and take out a couple of cards, add in a couple of cards, and still make it playable. But very often meta decks don't quite work that way. You have to make a whole new deck based on a whole new strategy and a whole new card. But yeah, I definitely was trying to also find a deck that would craft as many cards like Nibiru here that have a decent chance of being usable in other meta decks, whereas Tri-Brigade Kit is not likely to be connected to another meta deck. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says that the Nintendo UK has confirmed it won't stream tomorrow's Nintendo Direct in respect to the Queen, which, yeah, okay. They can do whatever they want. It seems a little silly to shut down your entire shut down your entire economy and your entire country just because someone who was obviously going to die died. And it's ridiculous how much the UK respects the monarchy when there just really isn't a lot of evidence that I've seen that there should be any respect for the monarchy. And I suspect that's what's going to happen, is that this new King George, who may only be in charge for a brief few years, is going to really bring back the hate for the monarchy, and as no longer do you have the cutesy face of Queen Elizabeth to hide the lack of logic around having a monarchy. Fortunately, I suppose, for video game news, I just don't think that many video game companies anyway, so the UK shutting down and doing nothing, they could do it for months and it really wouldn't affect the video game world globally. They're effectively pretty irrelevant. Says, oh great, now you're facing a non-stop spell counter Omni Negate deck. Awesome. Yep. Yeah. I do not disagree that there's room for change and a need for change, and that the meta has shifted. And if I just keep playing Zodiac Tri-Brigade, I do suspect I will just continuously get my butt handed to me. I screwed up here. We get something with a decent amount of attack. think I may have gotten it. I may have sacrificed too much to get to this point, but I guess the question comes down to which one of these do we want to get rid of. Get rid of that. Hit this. Sniper Ranger said I should have chained something. I'm not sure specifically what I should have chained. Let's go ahead and not place that since we already have one card and you can only activate one of these at a time. I'm not particularly good at figuring out what should be chained or not. Let's see. GameDeveloper.com says Ubisoft has announced a diversity plan. Devs say more changes needed. The diversity plan that Ubisoft announced, I think, isn't probably too different from the last time they announced a diversity plan. This is from GameDeveloper.com, so take it with a bit of grain of salt since they have been actively pushing the narrative that Ubisoft is just an awful, toxic workplace for probably 2 years now. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. There's the whole, not quite a unionization effort movement, a better Ubisoft, that is probably getting far too much press for its own good from GameDeveloper.com that I think is also pushing towards more change. Let's see. Special something from the graveyard? Sure. Go ahead and special summon that. Go ahead and, I guess, send this to the graveyard. Go ahead and add that to the hand. Go ahead and banish this card. Could have potentially banished the pendulum cards, but he's doesn't have too much of that. Let's see, GameDeveloper.com has an article here. Assassin's Creed Infinity looks to be a service platform, not a game. A battle.net for Assassin's Creed. Nothing is true, everything is permitted. And that's a quote from kind of the first game. I don't know if it ever even is uttered again in any major amount after the first game. And some of these stories are out of order because I clicked on them off of my Twitter feed. So that's why we're jumping between different sources. Okay, set this here. And then guess you summon this here. And then I guess you activate this. Go ahead and banish 4. See, that definitely feels like we are done at that point. victory. It's nice to have a victory. Try and get up on the ranked. 2 more wins. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says the Rockstar co-founder Dan Houser is invested in a block game studio and joined the advisory board. Revolving Games is making a Battlestar Galactica game and then Nintendo-inspired RPG, which Nintendo-inspired RPG almost certainly means something like Zelda, because I doubt you're thinking about any of the other Nintendo RPGs that they made, like Star Tropics. But yeah, we seem to be hitting a point now where people think they have forgotten about the backlash around blockchain and NFTs and all of that, and it feels like people are actively back to just trying to swindle people using these systems. Let's see, Battlestar Galactica in particular is kind of old at this point. It's kind of silly to make a Battlestar Galactica game. Sniper Ranger prefers Star Trek over Battlestar, and there are arguably not enough Star Trek games, I will agree, even though the history of Star Trek games have been pretty awful. Movie tie-ins, sci-fi TV tie-ins have always been fairly bad. But yeah, as far as there's probably been about 30 plus Star Trek games that have been made and released, and like the deck simulator that doesn't really have much of a game around it, the NVR bridge simulator, I think might be what it was called, and then there was like an NES Star Trek game or Super NES Star Trek game that wasn't terrible. I know there was a couple of full motion video Star Trek games that were released for like the Windows 95 era. There's probably about 3 of them, but that's kind of it. There is already a Star Trek card game out there, and I played it for a brief second, but it wasn't very interesting. Like, you're starting off basically with the Borg Queen and Patrick Stewart Picard and like Wesley Crusher and those characters, and that was kind of it. That there wasn't a lot of room for expansion. There was a odd heavy emphasis on having specific styles of spaceships, like the Enterprise, or I couldn't even name another Star Trek ship. Deep Space Nine maybe was one of them, and that seemed to be like your main card, that you then used the character cards like Wesley Crusher to strengthen Deep Space Nine. But yeah, it really didn't feel like a trading card game or a collectible card game. It was more of a deck building game, and it came out maybe 2 years ago. Inherently, I think most people who like Battlestar Galactica like the new Battlestar Galactica that the Sci-Fi Channel made, and they don't really care one bit about the original Battlestar Galactica as a series. And because Battlestar Galactica was always a B-tier sci-fi series, it wasn't the Star Wars or Star Trek in people's minds. It wasn't even the Babylon 5, which personally I'm Babylon 5 all the way, but I also know that if they tried to make a Babylon 5 game, it would probably be awful. Um, um, but they are trying to make a reboot of Babylon 5, and I'm hoping that's not awful, but it probably will be. It's a 50-50 shot, really. But because really Battlestar Galactica was a C-tier series that just, they were going to take that name and make a new sci-fi show, and then they were going to take the general concept of robots attacking humans. They were able to throw out most of the rest of the ideas and just make a new original series and pretend like it was a remake of an old series, and it worked fairly well. Whereas you look at like the Picard series right now, where ideally this the Peacock Network would love to eliminate all the old Star Trek fans and create a collection of new Star Trek fans who like the Picard series or like the Star Trek, I think Discovery series was the one before that also didn't really succeed, or even the Star Trek reboots of the movies, which those actually were just trying to remake the old series for the most part. But yeah, none of it really works. And in all fairness, I think historically, if you actually looked at it, the original Star Trek series didn't originally work either. Like, it wasn't until the Star Trek original series had been canceled that the fandom really revealed itself as being a big collection of people. And I think Star Trek really succeeds way better from that perspective too, is that in retrospect each Star Trek series gets better and better, and in retrospect each Star Wars movie gets better and better, because the most recent one is the most off-putting and most different of the series. But personally, I would lean towards saying there's probably a much smaller selection of the original series that's worth watching, and then a pretty decent selection of people of next generation Star Trek episodes, and then that's kind of it. Like, I don't know if there's even a single next generation or past that point Star Trek that's really worth talking about. We have Kevin Too Hard on the chat, just making a joke saying dank magician, and then Sniper Ranger says I have to go, got college class. Which, okay, by all means, don't be late to class because you're watching a YouTuber stream. Let's see if we can do anything around this. I kind of wish Battlestar Galactica was something that had more money behind it, though. Generally speaking, I'm fine with things just failing and people forgetting about it, but had NBC Universal or CBS or ABC or Fox really put the money behind Battlestar Galactica, and it was one of the primetime like channel shows, and it was like Friends or How I Met Your Mother, and something that they just kept funding and dragging out, that might have been interesting. But yeah, that was almost certainly never going to happen, and I think NBC Universal at the time at least did own Sci-Fi Channel, so So actually, there's a very good possibility that it should have been funded more. And it's not like Battlestar Galactica looked bad. It's just it didn't get enough advertising. It wasn't on at the right time. It wasn't promoted enough. It had some rough endings. I think the ending was rough and a little too crazy for what it was going for. And it has like side movies, which makes it feel a lot more like the side movies to the Stargate series. Stargate series is another series that definitely could have benefited by just being advertised. Well, Sniper Ranger says bye. They still tease the idea of rebooting the Stargate series or making a new movie based off the original Stargate movie. So those were the extra articles I clicked on. So now we're just into the default Video Game Chronicles articles. So we're going one large group here. Apparently increased stocks have helped the PlayStation 5 become the UK's best-selling console year to date. Which I thought this was just a gray image, but nope, there's actually a PS5 if I scroll down. Which, okay. I guess it's undeniable that demand is high for the PlayStation 5, and it hasn't just magically, that demand hasn't magically evaporated just because it's been hard to get units. If this Christmas season goes poorly, I could see them though running out of enthusiasm. Because if the PlayStation 5 is 2-3 years old and most of the people who wanted it have gone through 2 Christmases and not gotten it, they probably moved on. Kids are fairly flippant. Let's see. The PlayStation-backed Deviation game has lost its former Call of Duty boss. The co-founder Jason Blundell has left the studio, which is making an original IP, which arguably this is not relevant information in a sub-headline. Yeah. I think we'd probably already even covered this article on Friday. But yeah, it definitely does not help the PlayStation 5 by any means to succeed on one end and finally get enough units in stock to start selling the hardware, and then fail on the other end and not have any video games or independent games or first party titles to sell it. Let's see. Xbox and Twitch are hosting an indie game showcase next week, which, yeah, we are definitely getting towards the Christmas season here. September 14th. That's not next week, that's in a couple of days. That is right before the Tokyo Game Show, and they seem to be going for the idea of, hey, let's highlight some indie games right before the Tokyo Game Show happens. And arguably, the games they're going to highlight would not in any way show up at the Tokyo Game Show, and I'm not sure if either one of those presentations knows who is the more important or bigger of the two, because the Tokyo Game Show, while it should be a major event, is notoriously ignored by the West. So I wouldn't be surprised if it is once again notoriously ignored by the West. But yeah, we are definitely getting closer and closer towards that Black Friday holiday season. And yeah, I don't really feel like I'm going to be buying a lot of video games. I've just been buying a lot of other things instead, trying to get other projects done. Let's go and just summon all of these. Just pull off the Zeus strategy. Attack. Because you've attacked with those kinds of characters, you can summon Zeus. Though I could have played this card, come to think of it, and then I could have done one more damage. Oh well, we'll leave everything as it is. And that should play out pretty well anyways. Marvel Midnight Suns will release this year after all, 2K confirms. They recently delayed the game with no release date issued. This is again from Video Games Chronicles. We have seen basically nothing around Marvel Midnight Suns, and I don't know if there's really a game there that anybody is actually interested in. And so he's going to cancel my ability to activate the card destruction of, because I could basically clear the board by just discarding 2 cards. Seems like he's trying to play Cyber Dragon. So I don't know if now is the time to activate this. Let's see. Video Game Chronicles says, here's a first look at Uncharted director's Captain America Black Panther game. Which, okay. So, this was set in World War II, Black Panther, and Captain America. So it is gonna play out kind of in a different timeline. And it probably won't have any of, like, famous actors, voice actors, or anything like that. This is from Skydance New Media. Are we just getting panning shots of backgrounds? For all I know, this is a point-and-click adventure looking at these panning shots. Like they're basically not showing any action at all. I have to actually play. That definitely is a teaser trailer. Like, you just get this panning shot, and fade to black, and this. And it does seem to imply that at some point Captain America and Black Panther will be fighting against each other. Definitely early days. And when it's a game like that is so early days, there just really is nothing to say. So there might as well have not been an article or a teaser trailer released in the first place. Let's see. Here's the first official footage of The Division Heartland, according to Video Games Chronicles, which is a mobile game. Which I don't care about. Speaking of mobile games I don't care about, the spin-off Destiny Child game that I played for a while there Defense War: Destiny Child. I installed that for about 5 minutes to just see what has changed in about a year, and not enough, certainly, to make it more interesting. There are things that have changed, and it's grown a little bit, but it still is a player versus player tower defense style game. And it is, I guess, visually more interesting to look at than most player versus player tower defense games, but that's about all you can say that's nice about it. Let's see if we can activate that now. Let's see. This person, Shu-Rei Agdashlu, is going to star in Assassin's Creed Mirage. The actress says she was seduced by the character's backstory. I don't think I've ever seen this actress before. She was in 24 and The Expanse, which I couldn't get into The Expanse, and I didn't even care for a second to be interested in 24. Which maybe this is stunt hiring a somewhat famous name to be in a voice actor in a video game, or maybe it is really just more of a case of her having a specific unique voice that would add something to the project. I will leave it up to, I guess, people's personal opinions there. Okay. What I think I need to do is summon this here, activate this, hope I have enough cards to do this. That does that. This may stop me. Let's go ahead and activate this effect then. Go send that to the graveyard. Activate this effect. Discarding this card. And we'll try again. Having to do quite a bit here to get this to work. Banish. And can we do anything else? No, so we should attack. And we should probably attack the strongest one. Maybe we should have attacked the other one. Unless this gets destroyed, I probably have lost. Let's see. Assassin's Creed Mirage revealed Baghdad entry as a tribute to the original game, which, yeah, it definitely felt like it was going to be in part inspired by the original game. But it definitely doesn't feel like it doesn't really feel like they're getting back to the old Assassin's Creed games, particularly that first game. Like it definitely feels like it is a completely different type of experience now. Should probably stop playing and just focus on the news after this game. Future Assassin's Creed games include Japan, a horror, a multiplayer, Ubisoft confirms. And this has always been the problem with the Assassin's Creed series, it has been kind of all over the place as far as what Ubisoft wanted it to be. A Assassin's Creed game being a horror does not make any sense. Setting it in Japan is something that they have fought for decades to not do. People have been wanting an Assassin's Creed ninja character from pretty much day one. Multiplayer, they've tried to cram into Assassin's Creed games over and over again, and nobody wants it. The subtitle here says 2 of the flagship games will be part of the upcoming Infinity Game Hub, which really just feels like they're again trying to make a new Uplay and rebrand Uplay instead of just getting rid of it. Ubisoft Forward has a major announcements that they streamed, and apparently Mario vs. Rabbids Spark of Hope Rayman DLC 3 teaser was not something people are particularly interested in because they're all talking about Assassin's Creed only. Let's see, what else did they talk about here? Just Dance 2023. Nobody cares about that. Rainbow Six Mobile, The Division Heartline, The Crew 2. And then Simon Belmont and Alucard are joining the Brawlhalla game October 19th, which I'd forgotten about Brawlhalla. Skull and Bones trailers, which is just really promises at this point. And then Assassin's Creed Mirage. So, nothing really knocking my socks off as far as the Ubisoft Forward event. And perhaps they just didn't need to make a announcement at this time if that's the way things were going to go. There's still speculation that a Wind Waker / Metroid Prime Nintendo Direct is coming tomorrow. It's suspected that it will not only be Wind Waker, but Twilight Princess will be announced, and Metroid Prime Remake. Hope. I think there's a hope that will get announced. And it's not like Nintendo really has anything to announce at this point anyways. Splatoon 3 came out, so making new announcements for the Christmas season at this point is getting dangerously close to just making promises that will never be delivered. And I guess it is a question as to when is the right time to start making empty promises to try to bump up your Christmas time sales of hardwares. Let's see. SNK lead has insisted that the Saudi Arabian sale will have no effect on the games they make. Saudi Arabia's PIF has acquired 96% of the Japanese developer, raising issues of human rights abuses, which that's not the only problem, certainly. The Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund is basically the Crown Prince's investment fund. It's chaired by the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and they've been trying to invest in video games a lot recently, and it's questionable certainly as to whether it's just to make money or whether it's to buy influence, and that's always the risk, and often it's why not both. Although, in all fairness, SNK being owned by a Saudi Arabian company probably leads to as many new good SNK games as were made in the past decade, which is to say none. So, yeah, I don't think SNK has done really anything in a very long time, so they really are just selling out to keep themselves afloat. Let's see. Splatoon 3 has smashed the Switch launch records in Japan. The latest entry has already sold 3.45 million units in the first few days, according to Nintendo. So, yeah, that massive amount of success around Splatoon 3 does certainly give them a buffer to just say, hey, now is the time to announce things that won't be available for a while. And if they don't really care about a Metroid Prime remake, and if they really don't care about Wind Waker or Twilight Princess remakes, announcing it a week after the game they probably do care about in Splatoon 3 would be the time you would do that, is to just try and bury it or just not care about it. You wouldn't wait for a bigger Nintendo Direct closer to Black Friday, which we may see that, or they announce something else even. Apparently Big the Cat features in the leaked Sonic Frontiers footage, although I don't think this is a screenshot of Sonic Frontiers. I think this is probably Sonic Frontiers. Which that means absolutely nothing to me, frankly, as someone who's not really a Sonic fan. I don't know who Big the Cat is. I don't think he's an important character, really. We kind of already talked about the new Xbox dashboard launching next year. You can see what they're speculating it's going to look like. I just don't really think too many people are even going to care. You spend less and less time on the dashboard these days anyways because of the sleep and deep sleep functions. You launch a game and the game goes sleep, and then when you wake up your Xbox, you're back in the game. You don't go to the menu and deal with any of that. It just gets out of the way like it should. I wish Windows would get out of your way more, frankly. I imagine most operating systems would do better that way. Even the cell phone operating systems. There's a lot of going to the desktop to launch into another app, which it'd be nice if that was quicker too. 17 days to duel in solo mode, and we need to watch a duel live, and that's about it. So let's go through the news and burn. It has now been officially confirmed the Nintendo Direct will take place tomorrow. It will feature 40 minutes of info on upcoming Switch games. Bayonetta 3, I guess probably not on this list, even though I think Bayonetta 3 has already been announced, or at least pretty well confirmed. I'm not sure it's actually out or that there's an actual release date for it being out. Gametsu articles here. Kazuni AI Touch Beat is coming to the PS4 and 5 in early 2023. Dueled is going to publish and co-produce a new action RPG from Tiny Bull Studios. A Japanese-inspired cyberpunk stealth side-scrolling game called Shinobi Rising has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, PC, and mobile, which that is just basically everything. And seems like all you get is this teaser image. Guns on Darkness Kickstarter campaign is going to launch on September 12th. Seems like we really are getting back to Kickstarter. I thought Kickstarter was pretty much dead. Guns on Darkness as a title is fairly ridiculous, and this art style doesn't inspire the most amount of confidence. If you told me this was a dungeon crawler, I might believe you. If you told me this was a cheap JRPG game, I would believe you. The outfits here don't look amazingly cool. The animations look fairly flat, as it were. Yeah, nothing particularly unique there. A game called Arn Fantasia to the End of the Wilderness has a work-in-progress field test gameplay. You want to check that out. If the game's not even ready to put out an actual trailer, though, it's kind of pointless to look or be interested in that. The Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection for PC launches October 19th. Epic Game Store. Pre-orders include a new glider in Fortnite. It will apparently also launch via Steam. The collection, though, only includes Uncharted 4 and Uncharted The Lost Legacy. It does not include Uncharted 1, 2, or 3, which puts you kind of in a weird position, certainly on PC if you haven't played those games. This listing on Steam obviously has been around fairly long, because I don't even remember putting this on the fall list. And inherently it still feels like what they're trying to do is push the two female characters in The Lost Legacy and get you to mostly forget about Drake, Nathan Drake as a character, which just puts the whole series in this weird position. Meanwhile, while these games in this Legacy of Thieves collection is being released, there's been no new announcements for a new Uncharted game of any sort, or even a spin-off series not called Uncharted, starring the female characters. Chloe Fraser, I guess, is the female character in particular. It doesn't make a lot of sense to move over to Chloe Fraser when Nathan Drake was just a male ripoff version of Lara Croft anyway, so going back and just having a female ripoff version of Lara Croft doesn't make the most amount of sense. But there probably is enough room for 2 or 3 action heroes of both male and female genders if they want to make those games. But really, it gets back to they just need to announce a new Uncharted game. Duel Games has announced a visual novel called Tron Identity for PC, due out in 2023, which that seems extremely weird that you would have a visual novel for a Disney property in the first place. That just seems insane. On top of that, the whole Tron series doesn't make the most sense either, because it's not like I think they're going to make a new Tron movie. Maybe they are trying to test the idea of making a new Tron movie after making the Tron reboot movie, or continue it Tron sequel after a couple decades. Otherwise, this is a case where Disney is actively trying to court more of an Asian market by making a visual novel. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the day they try to sell this more as a action comic than a visual novel. They've got some big names with the team behind Thomas Was Alone and Subsurface Circular. That's somewhat big names. That's weird, though. There's no way to get around it. That is a weird project. A side-scrolling co-op platformer, Disney Illusion Island, has been announced for Switch, which, wow, this animation style looks nothing like the Disney animation style at all. I assume this has basically nothing to do with like Castle of Illusion. As this may just be a case of Disney straight up testing out a new animation style, because basically Disney has either fired all their animators, or the animators who would have drawn Disney, which would have been Walt Disney originally. I think he actively was the main keyframe animator there. They've long since either died or something, so yeah. And inherently, this is a problem with all Western animation, as I see it, as more of a fan of the more polished and more detailed animation styles that you see in anime, is that you do see a lot of Western animation styles where there's no real consistency, but you see a lot of this where it's done on the cheap and not done particularly well. Marvel's Midnight Suns for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC launches December 2nd. So we once again have a launch date. As far as a gameplay trailer, this is probably a fairly old one. Yeah. I'm not sure if this is actually an action game or if this is a turn-based game or what. Like, if you told me it was a Diablo clone, I might believe you there. But yeah, this is supposed to be a gameplay trailer, and just skipping through it, I'm having a real hard time figuring out what the gameplay mechanic even is. I think I just have to leave it at that. Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga Galactic Edition has been announced, which I have to assume that this is just kind of a definitive edition with all the DLC. It includes 6 new packs of Character Collection 2, adding 30 more playable characters, plus 7 packs of the original Character Collection. Yeah, it does seem like it's just a character collection to get more playable characters, which TT Games at this point has gone far too far as just selling DLC for skins of characters instead of selling actual levels. And frankly, since it is a kids game, there really shouldn't be any DLC for Lego games in the first place. It should be a complete thing. So yeah, there is a potential definitive edition that will be released of this game at some point in the future that actually has level expansions and DLC there. But I also wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't happen, because the Skywalker Saga probably covers all the interesting levels that you would have already wanted in a Lego game. And inherently they've put all their eggs in one basket here. If this rebooted Lego Star Wars game does not help TT Games greatly, Warner Brothers, in being acquired, will almost certainly shut down TT Games, or Lego will stop licensing to TT Games. Even if it does succeed fairly well, they then have to double their efforts to try and release either new Lego games not using Star Wars characters, or remakes of old Lego games, just starting over from scratch. Which, at a certain level, they could probably pull that off for some of them. The Harry Potter games could be remade from scratch, and nobody would complain too much on that. But the Lord of the Rings Hobbit games probably less likely to succeed being remade, and you're gonna run out of options fairly quickly. Some of the older Marvel games, based on like Marvel, DC Marvel Superheroes 1, or Marvel Superheroes, or the Lego Batman games, all of those they are a little bit more timeless, so making remakes on that doesn't make the most sense. And if they just try to make a generic Lego City game, that almost certainly would fail. A game called Gargoyles Remastered has been announced for consoles, which I have to assume that this is based off of the Gargoyles 90s cartoon, which again, that would be interesting. It's based on the 1995 Sega Genesis game with better graphics. That's not even the thing though that would really need to be improved, is the controls. It says updated visuals and controls, but even at that, the game itself is probably not that good. Like, an old Genesis game can't really be that good. The idea of remastering this when this really should be a remake is kind of crazy. Disney must have had an announcement in which they just announced a bunch of game deals, because Disney Speedstorm Monsters Inc. Racers has a revealed trailer. So Speedstorm, I suppose, is a Mario Kart clone, which, in all fairness, Disney Speedstorm could work. Disney does have enough characters to license to compete against Mario Kart, and they can really just steal everything Mario Kart has done for decades and improve upon it. It looks exactly like that's what they're doing. On top of that, Disney Speedstorm has a chance of being on PC. It seems to be on PC, and it seems like it might be free to play, so that could bring in a much bigger audience too. Let's see. Disney's Dreamlight Valley adds a Toy Story realm this fall. Dreamlight Valley is already out, and it seems like they almost rushed to release Dreamlight Valley before they made any of these other announcements, which is probably the right move, because I bet Dreamlight Valley doesn't stand against some of these other announcements. Let's see, we already talked about the Skydance Studio Captain America Black Panther game. Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope Wiggler Boss Fight gameplay is available if you want to check that out on Gamatsu. Skull and Bones trailer is available if you want to check that out. And the only thing I could really say as to why you would want to check out this trailer is just to remind yourself which of the 3 or 4 pirate games that they've been trying to release for the past 3 or 4 years is this one. This one looks like it's more realistic, but it is also really not showing you anything at all. You can customize your ship. I think they're both insane. I think Microsoft is insane and Ubisoft is insane to not just cancel the pirate games and say this was a dumb idea and just be done with it, or just push it out and be done with it. I think Microsoft's game is already out, so Ubisoft is throwing good money after bad, almost certainly. It's definitely not a project I would be enthusiastic behind. Let's see, Tom Clancy's The Division Heartline developer intro trailer is available if you want to check that out. And then we already talked about Ubisoft partnering with Netflix to make 3 exclusive games, which, you know, Assassin's Creed Netflix game might actually get me to check out the Netflix games. I don't even watch Netflix on my phone. I think Netflix probably doesn't realize how few people really want to watch Netflix on a cell phone, regardless of how big of a cell phone screen you can get. That you want to watch that on more of a streaming service, whether that's watching it on a laptop or a smart TV, ideally a smart TV, or a streamer box connected to a dumb TV. And none of those platforms, not PC, not Streamer Box, not Smart TV, is going to support video games. So I never launch Netflix on my phone, and I never see any of the games or anything that would even be an option. If anything, Netflix, I think, would be better off just focusing on making as good content as they can as a streaming service, and if they want to do something else, they should hire out and have a different company be the video game company. Let's see, Trackmania is coming to the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Stadia, and Luna in early 2023. It will remain free to play, support cross-play and cross-progression. I assume this is maybe the remake of a reboot of Trackmania, not some of the previous Trackmania games. Trackmania 2020. I think there were some other Trackmanias or ways to run custom servers in Trackmania. Assassin's Creed Mirage launches in 2023 for the PS4 and 5 and the Xbox One and Series and PC and Luna. Because this is getting back to the older times of Assassin's Creed, take note that this guy is missing his finger here, although he may be missing a finger here. It was the story that in the original Assassin's Creed, to become an assassin and use that hidden blade, you had to cut off your finger in a ritual, or you had your finger cut off in a ritual. But like fairly quickly in Assassin's Creed 2, they jumped forward in the future and said, no, we fixed that, so you don't need to cut off your finger. And so they're making a reference back to that. Although, as gory as that may be, you probably won't actually see it in the game very often. You really didn't in the first game. The character was always too far behind. But yeah. It's an homage, certainly. And that seems to be about all you really are going to ever get as far as the first few Assassin's Creed games, is an homage to the original games to just try to inspire nostalgia. For smartphones, Ancient China Assassin's Creed codename Jade has been announced for mobile, which is probably no coincidence that you would set one in China and it be a mobile game, because almost certainly you are trying to court some percentage of Chinese market, and most gamers in China, I imagine, are on mobile, at least at the moment. While Assassin's Creed as a series has been known for giving you fairly large areas and using a lot of AI to depict characters, NPC characters, so much time has happened that it is feasible to believe that a modern cell phone might run what is the equivalent of the first Assassin's Creed game fairly well. It's not like they've made the artificial intelligence of the crowds smarter. There's really not a lot of reason to do that. Noticeably smarter. Or make bigger areas. The areas were already ridiculously large in early Assassin's Creed games. A feudal Japan set Assassin's Creed codename Red and Assassin's Creed codename Hexi have been announced, which these, I guess, are the multiplayer. These are the main storyline games I think they're focusing on. Of course, part of the problem you also run with is that the assassins are increasingly forgetting that they were, at least in part, Islamic based, or at least maybe following some Judeo-Christian Islamic god, yeah, because if you're getting into Japan, any of that religious aspect almost certainly would be gone. And if you're getting into witchcraft, which is almost certainly what this is at this point, you're getting fairly far away from any of that. Although I don't know if there really was any deep faith or respect to begin with as far as the assassins. As soon as they figured out that the Templars were the bad guys, it became certainly more of a case that they were just anti-Templars. And as soon as they figured out that there were ancient aliens, and the ancient aliens were where the myths of some of the Roman gods or Greek gods, I don't remember, some of the ancient gods came from, then that also, I think, throws a monkey wrench into everything. Yeah, there might be an interesting paper around what do assassins actually believe as far as any of the religious events that happened. But I bet Ubisoft has barely stuck their toe in actually explaining any of that. Certainly, though, it is fairly dangerous, though, to make a game that's going to be focused around witchcraft. This might be the way that you get back into early 13 colonies of the United States, though. It'd be kind of hard to expect that there would be witchcraft as a major thing and it not being somewhere around like the Salem witch trials or something like that. And they probably would like to put a new story in the early United States times. Still really no desire to put the Assassin's Creed series in modern times, though. That's still what they were going to do with that other game series that went nowhere. Can't even remember the name of it. But that was supposed to be the modern times version of Assassin's Creed in the same universe. Yeah, and I just cannot remember the name of it at all. It was a Ubisoft hacking everything minigame. Not minigame, it was a full game, and it had a sequel set in the UK. Moving on, Dragon Quest X Offline has 25 minutes of gameplay if you want to check that out. Pocket Bravery adds Sho Kamui from the Breakers series, which this is some kind of like small fighting game, a beat 'em up game. Yeah, it does just look like a fighting game with no heads-up display at all, which is a little weird because it kind of just feels like the fight could go on forever. A mobile phone game it is not, so odd to be so zoomed in, unless this was a remake of a very old game. Pocket Bravery seems like it is odd, making some odd choices as far as its visuals based on the services it's going to be available on. If it was a Switch exclusive, it might make more sense, but to be on every console, it's kind of crazy. This week's game releases are available to check out. I think we may have already looked at these lists, and this probably will get updated, so we'll just skip over that. Trouble Witches Final Episode 1, Daughters of Amalgam, launches March 16th in Japan. This looks like a side-scrolled shoot-'em-up game. Koumajo Remilia 2, Stranger's Requiem, has been announced for Switch and PC. This sounds like a visual novel. It's fairly busy. It's kind of hard to even see for certain that this is part of her hair, because I wouldn't be surprised if this actually is just a girl or a vampire biting the guy. I think it's a vampire lady biting the guy. Or biting the girl. Yeah. It's apparently an action side-scrolling game, though. Not a visual novel. Interesting. So it's like a Castlevania game. Which we could always use a couple of more efforts on this. So it seems like it's a collection of anime girls, although going for more of a harsher lined, almost like harsh manga animation style, more than what you'd actually see in anime. But yeah. There were definitely some animes that had this kind of harsh, drawn out imagery, but I don't know if it really became much more of a style than what you would describe as maybe a stretched out, harsh, gothic Lolita style would be what I would coin as a phrase, but it's probably something better than that. Maybe Black Butler style might be. There's an anime called Black Butler that might be in line with that. There was some Chobits animation styles, I think. No, I'm not Chobits. Clamp, the animation studio, had some animation styles for some of their things. Looked kind of like that. A remastered Jellicoe RPG Wheeze Man's World retry has been announced. A young sorcerer goes on an adventure to restore the world. It definitely seems like we're starting to get more weirder announcements as we approach Tokyo Game Show. Like this. Looks like it's a Japanese RPG that's trying fairly hard to make you not realize that it's just a JRPG. The 1987 arcade game remake Psychic 5 Eternal has been announced for Switch. This, again, obviously from 1975, is going to be fairly weird looking. Yeah, and almost certainly this is not a game that came to the West, and I'm not sure it actually is going to come to the West this time either. It does feel like it's something that's just all over the place as a game. So I'd almost have to assume that there was some level of fandom around this game. Otherwise, why bother to bring it back? Although it may be Psychic 5 indicates that there were 4 previous Psychic games that people didn't like as well. And it took till the 5th one for it to really succeed. Let's see, Legend of Heroes Kuro no Kisekai 2 Crimson Sin has its opening movie if you want to check that out on Gamatsu. There's some 3D models of characters, obviously, that you could see. Splatoon 3 sales topped 3.45 million in the first 3 days in Japan. We had already talked about this, but that is big numbers to say the least. Mermaid Raising Simulator game My Mermaid has been announced. I feel like this game had been announced, but maybe I'm thinking of something different. I think I am. These screenshots definitely look new. I don't know if there's a big difference though between a daughter raising simulator and a mermaid raising simulator. Maybe you go a little bit more kid friendly. Disney did just announce the new like live action African American Ariel Little Mermaid movie, so maybe mermaids would be a big thing, or come back into fashion amongst little girls. So there might be something to that. A game called Vengeance is Mine has been delayed to the first half of 2024. Inherently, I don't feel like I'm really in much of a position to complain about anything Disney does with its old Disney movies. I probably was never really their target audience for Little Mermaid, but even if I was a target audience when I was a kid many decades ago, I'm not now, and it does seem like they're out of ideas. It's fairly obvious they're out of ideas, and they're just remaking live action versions of their old animated shows, maybe just to keep the copyright or something like that. Does feel very odd that in general Disney is stopping itself from being a animation company and turning itself into just a live action movie production company. But I don't know what Disney really should do. They're going to have their own downfall almost certainly if they do anything. They probably should just pull up the ladder behind them, take all the profits they can possibly get, and just not produce anything new unless it's brand new and has a chance of making real profits, instead of trying to lean on nostalgia. They already have Disney Plus, which can give them recurring revenue to show the old movies, and they should just be happy about that. Run the Disney lands and Disney worlds and make an occasional new movie here and there, but don't get ambitious, don't go bold. License out your properties as much as possible, and just take it easy on your pile of money. Don't ruin your legacy potentially, or don't do anything that even has a chance of causing controversy or ruining your legacy by remaking beloved classics. Sounds like a really bad idea. Let's see. A game called Sunday Gold has been delayed to October 13th, no longer to September 13th. I feel like this is the first time I've even heard of this game. It's a point-and-click turn-based RPG of some sort. Nintendo Direct set for September 13th. We've already talked about that multiple times. African American versions of Disney movies don't affect me and don't bother me at all. Like, it at least is a gimmick that kind of makes some sense. It smacks of maybe some segregation in the idea that you're saying little kids need to see people that are of their same skin color, and previously when you've had an African American Annie, or I imagine there's been a couple other ones like that, it's really never played as well as the original, and it's just come off as pandering. I think kids today are probably more woke than ever before, and can look past skin color, and that's what we teach them, or we'd like to teach them, is to look past skin color. But yeah, who knows? It gives work to new actors and actresses. I can't complain about that, really. Like, if Disney was just training up the next generation of actors by remaking their movies, and if they just came out and said that was their plan all along, I'd be more than happy with that as a plan. Our final Gamatsu article here: Loop 8 Summer of the Gods is coming to the West in spring of 2023 for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. This was, I believe, a visual novel story that must have been somewhat good. Although, actually, it doesn't really have to be that good to actually get brought over. It just has to probably sell well enough that they would be willing to do a slightly better translation to English. Most visual novels, even if not released in the West, tend to have a certain level of English translation already. They're labeling this as a JRPG, and it does feel more like a JRPG than a visual novel. Interesting. This might be one of those stories where the world is destroyed and you go back in time. This might be closer to something like an attempt at being something like a Persona series. Yeah. It definitely feels more like a Persona game, where your relationships affect the outcomes, and it's a JRPG game. Now, this character has ugly plaid school pants, and that's always annoying to look at, but I could probably struggle through that if the game is actually good. I don't think the animation here looks amazing, but honestly, compared to like Persona 3 Golden, the animation probably is better than that. So yeah, there might be something to that. Alright, so let's look now at the games that have come out on Steam. We have one called The Infernal Return, which visually I don't think has quite enough polish to it. It almost looks like it might have been a mobile game that they're now trying to sell on PC. I'm going to say no to that. We're going to try and burn through this one. This one is tagged nudie and hentai. And yet it's not in the adult section. Almost certainly there would be more cleavage or breasts being shown in these screenshots. Still seeing a decent number of these games that are just kind of low effort match 3 games, and they are either being sold with a uncensored patch, which is what this almost certainly is, or they're being sold in such a way that they claim there is no nudity, but then the screenshots imply that there is, just to trick people. Although this one seems to straight out say there is. This again is one of those games that, because it's a witch, because she's tall and big-breasted, there's less perhaps censorship or consternation around Steam and Valve allowing this game to be on their platform. The animation style doesn't look amazing, but if she was more of the moe art style and shorter and smaller breasts and looking perhaps a little bit younger, or wearing a school outfit, a Japanese school outfit in particular, those games tend to be less likely to be allowed on Steam. Let's see. This game is literally showing me nothing, so I'm going to say no to that. Here we have a pipes game, which I guess the idea here would be to figure out if Pip 3 has had a Pip 2 and a Pip 1. Pip 2, August 26th, seemingly with no reviews. Pip 1, yeah, 50% positive on Pip 1. So, yeah, and this came out also in 2022, so he's basically flooding the Steam marketplace with not good versions of Pipe Dreams games. Cities and Castles doesn't quite look like my style of game. Super Bowl Arena doesn't look like anything. Project Special Forces doesn't look like anything. Astrid here looks like the beginning of a tech demo of a game, but it's definitely missing a lot of fluid movement and polish. And it's always a shame when you see what looks like a tech demo or an experiment or a student project trying to be sold on Steam. And that definitely would be the case where if Valve was going to fully get into the realm of curating what is on their storefront, that they would have a kind of hard time picking the winners and losers as far as tech demos and such. There probably is a better system than Steam and Valve curating what gets put on their storefront, since they've already gone down the path of directly paying $100 to list your game under relatively few limitations. Inherently, if you spent $100 but then they told you you have 6 months to get at least 30 reviews, that would probably just cause people to game the review system, so that probably wouldn't work either. There could be a quarterly removal of games that are horribly rated. You could certainly do that, and then that might be games in which people are straight up just trying to eliminate the competition by getting people to negatively review games. Inherently, though, most people don't ever even see unreviewed or negatively reviewed games anyway, so really it's just me and me alone that sees the bad games. At least it feels like that's the case. And even I don't see everything, because at the moment I have the adult content filtered. Bone Lover here. I think I'll be generous and put this on the follow list, but I don't think there's really a justification around putting that on the follow list as much as I would think there should be. Bouncing racing car. Sorry, I was looking at my phone. It's nothing. Holiday Jigsaw Christmas. Now would be the time, certainly, to start releasing Christmas and any like Thanksgiving games that you were going to try and sell, but I've never seen a good Thanksgiving or Christmas game that at all, so they really aren't the kind of genres that you should try and play. Top-down hack and slash procedurally generated world. I don't think it has quite enough polish to make me want to play this, although it's getting close. Here we have a Otome Young Maiden visual novel that seems to also be a fighting game with playing solitaire. That's interesting. Unfortunately, Japanese only. We don't really get that many Japanese only games. That may be because there is possibly a Steam.jp that lists Japanese only games, and Steam.com is more for English speaking people. Or it may just be that if you are going to make a game Japanese only, you're probably not going to make it PC in the first place. Or if you do make it PC, you're not going to put it on Steam. City Cards Challenge. I'll give this a follow. Yeah. Says it's coming out today. Although maybe I should have made a YouTube short around that too. I also needed to schedule, like every Friday now, it needs to become my habit to schedule YouTube shorts further and further ahead in the future. This is a prelude. Engine Evolution 2022 looks like something. Can make a YouTube short around that. Dragon Blast doesn't look like anything. Junkers doesn't look like anything. Here we have another visual novel, maybe not a young maiden otome in this case. Animation style still coming off a little awkward, not typically as polished as I would expect. Japanese only. Maybe this is all from the same developer slash publisher, maybe this is just because the Tokyo Game Show is about to happen. Kings and Catapults. Looks like a mobile game. I'll give this a chance, but I won't make a YouTube short around it. Road Warden. Looks like it's a text-based game. It doesn't look awful though, so again, I'll give it a chance just because it's different. Again, that would be a poor YouTube short. Well, almost done. Extra Case, My Girlfriend's Secret is a RPG Maker horror game. Yeah, I don't think there's anything there to be interested around. Bubble Wars. It's probably not a game here. It looks like it's a mobile phone clone. Let's see if we can get a general idea of how you play this. Bubbles bounce and you seem to be trying to avoid the bubbles or break them in half by launching spears in the air. Yeah, that doesn't seem like a consistent idea of a game. It's got a horror game trying to get different endings. Doesn't look interesting. Yeah, we're not quite to the point where I would expect there to be particularly good games coming out on Steam. Give it a week or two, we should start to see some more announcements and more things come out. Although it may just also be a lot of announcements for things that aren't going to be out for several more weeks and things that aren't going to be on Steam in the first place. I'll give this a chance. I'm being fairly generous often as far as what I'm putting on the follow list, but I think as a system that's working fairly well. Stone balancing as a concept. I feel like this is definitely an activity you would want to do in the real world if you're going to do it at all. And inherently, it seems like you could just drill through stones and put a steel rod to make them look like they're balancing, or cement them together to make them look like they're balancing. Of course, that would probably defeat the purpose of whatever Zen-like activity that you're getting from that. We have something called Cake 4D, which looks like garbage. Roll on dice. Do you have to match the numbers that you're hitting, or are you just colliding into the dice? Because if you're just colliding into the dice, then it's not much different than any other box pushing game. I'll give it a follow though. Probably getting a little desperate at this point because there's just been so few games that are actually good. We have another Do Magic and Archery in VR, which the standards are so low for VR that I'll put that on the follow list. It really has been probably a year and a half though, if not longer, since we've had a game announced or listed on Steam that's like a AAA game that really knocks my socks off and really makes me want to play it. The pandemic has really killed a lot of enthusiasm and hype for any AAA games. But also, I just don't know if they weren't just headed that way anyways, because even slightly before the pandemic, it didn't seem like they had great ideas for new games. And at a certain point, I don't know what game developers are doing, if they've just run out of ideas, or if they've just lost the magic twist, the magic touch, as far as making something interesting. Or maybe I've just lost enthusiasm for things. But yeah, that Bright Infinity game might have been one of the last games to be announced that looked slightly interesting and actually come out. And then there's been some console games like Spider-Man 2, I imagine. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says there's a report that the Free Fire developer Garena Makes is the name of the company, Garena Makes? Or is it just Garena? But apparently there's a report that they've laid off hundreds at the Shanghai office, which that's believable. I don't know this game company though, but it's believable layoffs can happen anywhere. I still tinfoil hat suspect we may find that the population is way smaller in China in particular because of the pandemic, and that China will actively try to hide the number of people that have died and just make it look like people disappeared or never existed in the first place. Moving on, Roblox takes aim at cloning in a new developer update, which I guess you clone people in the developer update, maybe scanning heads, making animations interesting. It's not just China though, to talk tinfoil hat the theory. Like, I imagine most countries are gonna realize their populations are way smaller than they want to admit. Deviation Games co-founder Jason Blundell departed the country. He founded the Sony-backed Deviation Games in 2021 and was the game director for this on the studio's currently unannounced project. Which, yeah. So obviously, he didn't get anywhere as the person in charge or as a co-founder. Let's see. That's certainly too early, obviously, for somebody to leave. Is 1 year into the job. Although it's not that crazy either. Like, more people really should leave jobs in the first 6 weeks, 6 months, first year. Like, you give it a reasonable amount of time and see, is this going to get better, is this going to get worse? But if from close to day one it's been an awful experience, it's insane to just stick with it forever. So many people stick with bad jobs and end up regretting it later. Of course, that is the privilege of the rich, that you could just leave a job that you co-founded in particular. And then I think we've already talked about this, but Valve has launched official Steam Deck repair centers, which feels like it would be a little premature to actually need those, but better to have them and not need them than to need them and not have them, to coin an old phrase. We have a game called Turbo Overkill as a first-person shooter. It's overwhelmingly positive. It's still in early access and it's single player. Which, yeah, definitely should come out of early access, and then I'd be willing to put it on the wish list. But since it is still in early access, that's going to be a no. Now we're doing the follow list cleanup. Tunnel Doom here is mixed, so that leaves the follow list. Let's see, Tunguska, the Visitation. Not Tunguski, is it? No. Tunguska is different. Let's see, what kind of game is this? Looks like you sit around and talk a lot, and it's kind of a survival, almost RPG experience. Single player, Russian, full audio, Chinese, Italian. I don't think I can justify just saying no to a game because it's Russian, full audio. But I do think I could probably justify saying no to a game that just doesn't look particularly that fun. It definitely feels like it is a looter survival game more than anything, with more stealth elements compared to something like Diablo, where you'd just be clicking and fighting enemies all over the place. And this isometric tilted top-down view is not something that I particularly enjoy. So I'm going to make an executive decision and say no to that. The color palette of being brown is not amazingly great either. This is from 2020. And this seems to be probably mostly a player versus player game anyways. So I think I can say no to that. I can definitely say no to it. It's irrelevant. It's been out for 2 years and doesn't have any reviews. And then we've got a racing game. Inherently, the wish list will have far too many racing games compared to the number of ones I actually would want to play, own, and cover. But nothing here eliminates this from being one of the potential games that I would buy. We have a horror collection of like point and click horror games. I think maybe from Thailand, but maybe not. And again, I don't see a full reason to eliminate this, although there might be a case that this game is getting a remake and a re-release. So I don't really have any desire to play it at the moment. Seems to be a collection of horror games in a bundle. Try to remember here. I think we can say no to, just because it's irrelevant. True Hate, I think we have to say no to also. Die over again and again and start over again. Yeah, that definitely sounds like a frustration platformer game. And I definitely don't want to play frustration platformers or precision platformers. Troop, where you play as a clown. I think the gimmick of playing a clown probably doesn't beat this lack of relevance, but I may leave this on the follow list anyways. Yeah, give this some more time, even though it probably doesn't deserve it. Trouble Hunter Chronicles, Stolen Creed. Doesn't seem like it's relevant, but I could potentially say yes to this just because I'm a sucker for point and click adventure games. Let's look at some of the reviews here. Recommended, 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 received for free. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I'm seeing like one negative review and a bunch of positive reviews, so it's not particularly relevant as a point and click adventure game, but I'll go ahead and let it on the wish list just because I'm making an exception. And Troll Hunters Defenders of Arcadia barely is relevant. I think I probably want to say no to this. This also feels like this might be based off of a Nickelodeon cartoon or something that really wouldn't have any relevancy at this point also, so that can go away. We need to do a Duel Live Spectate, so we'll start that and then I'll scroll down my Twitter feed and see if there's any new news worth mentioning, and then that will be it for the stream. We are getting back to the 3-hour streams, so we're probably starting to see a newer a larger amount of new games being released. That's what I meant to say. Here's an article highlighting Dan Hauser. I assume this is Dan Hauser. Kind of doesn't matter because I just wanted to point out that I complained about a picture showing one of the lady higher up managers being less than full suit and tie dressed equivalents. Here's people getting an award, and there's one guy in a untucked shirt and a jacket. There's a guy in what may be a rain jacket and a button-up shirt. This guy's in a sweatshirt. This guy's not even buttoned up. Jeans galore. There really is a laid-back attitude towards the way you make yourself look in the video game industry, even when you're getting awards. Which, again, dress for success. That the Emmys are a big thing, certainly, and the Oscars and those big events are definitely a bigger thing because people dress up in ridiculously expensive Armani type suits and dresses. You go with that kind of ridiculous high fashion to give an air of extravagance, maybe even a bit of professionalism. Whereas seems like the game industry, here's Bonnie Ross in a different outfit, definitely just is really dressed down over and over again. Which, if the Game Awards is going to do one thing, they really should just require a suit and tie at the awards presentation. Arguably, there should be someone fairly nicely dressed at all video game presentations. You'll see at the Nintendo Direct, if any of the Japanese people show up, they will be dressed probably in a suit and tie, or maybe Miyamoto will be in a Mario shirt and somewhat dressed down. Miyamoto kind of falling in the pattern of being dressed down. But yeah, you'll definitely see them slightly nicer dressed. Inherently, this is just an old person trying to enforce the old ways of doing things. Seems like Bonnie Ross loves her leather jacket because she's wearing it always. Well, at least in 2 pictures. yeah, at a certain level, it's an old people enforcing old traditions, but I mean, I'll admit that I just think it gives off the air of pomp and circumstances. As we see the new UK king being crowned, you're going to see hundreds of years, if not thousands of year old traditions enacted for no other reason than to give off an air of authority, and it works. Sometimes presentations just work that way. Left to my own devices, if I was the emperor of the world and could make all the rules and change how everybody thought, then I'd say, yeah, everybody can be straight up naked for all I care, and still should be treated with the same level of respect. But it's just not how things really go. Yeah, this image does confirm that this guy is Dan Hauser, and here you can have him see him in a sweatshirt, apparently on the rooftop of some building. And that's certainly true for individuals too. It's like, if you're going to a job interview, show up in a suit for almost any job interview, even if it is working a factory line or an internship. Be 3 or 4 times overdressed compared to the person interviewing you, and you'll do fine. If they start to question that or make fun of you, you can always just fall back on the line that I'm going to a funeral, I'm going to a wedding. Probably go to a wedding is a better line to tell after it. But also you can just say the truth instead of lying, and that's probably better. Is just say, I dressed up for the job and the position that I wanted to earn and get, and I dressed up for you. I think very few bosses are going to not hire somebody because they overdressed. Now there is, I guess, a slight danger of somebody saying, alright, you're hired, get on the factory line now, and then you're working in a suit on a factory assembly line or something like that. But have a change of clothes. Always, that's a good plan for anything. Alright, well, there's not any new news worth talking about, which isn't super surprising for a Monday. So that worked out fairly nicely as far as timing. And we will collect that Duel live. And then that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.